Today we're going to talk about the FPG-100. It's a little billet hat replacement kit for your S14, S15 Silvias and R33, R34 Skylines. They use very similar configurations. There are several differences between the models. The early types had 8mm rubber hoses. The later types went to a GM style quick connect plastic line. Some of the lines are different. Our kit is -6 fittings. You can actually adapt them back onto the barbs if you want to retain your factory hoses. Some Venturi lines are pointing the other way. These fittings can be rotated easily if you want this to face the other way, or if you want the hat to be clocked in a certain position. Any of these three fittings can be spun around to suit your needs, and the same with that connector. That connector is actually on an O-ring. If you loosen the bolts, you can rotate the connector. You'll find on the underside there's this device here. It's a high flow Venturi system. It uses your fuel return to drive a suction effect through that port. So as your fuel returns through into the tank, it will create pressure, then accelerate through and draw a vacuum here, which is connected to that port. So your little 1/4" line there, or 6.4mm hose on your top there, is connected here, and it will siphon the fuel. I'll explain why and how it works. A lot of those cars use a tank that's often called a saddle tank. It's because it usually sits over your tail shaft or your drivetrain. So you have two sides, we'll call it A and B, and if your fuel pump sits here and you've got fuel there, that's called your active side, and that's your passive side. Some cars run a hose from here to there to balance out the levels. A lot of those cars don't. So in your Silvias and in your Skylines, there is no hose connecting the two sides. It relies on this Venturi system to transfer this fuel back into here. So if your top hat sits over here and we have fuel supply, fuel return, and a little connection here, there's actually a hose with a pickup that will go to here. As your fuel returns through your hat into the Venturi, it will suck fuel out of that line and drain this side and dump it back here into your active side. So realistically, when you have half a tank, you should have fuel here and less fuel here. It allows your pump to be fully fed at all times. Now, I've seen a lot of cars that people use the factory hat, they're putting upgraded pumps, they have back pressure problems because the Venturi can't handle the fuel return with the bigger pumps. They take it off thinking, that's a problem anyway. And then they start complaining that they're not getting really good fuel economy. It's because they're actually not using that fuel at all, because there's no way for it to return. Now, when you go to the service station and put more fuel in, the tank is full, so you end up with a full capacity. Your gauge will read full, but as this comes down, you get to that saddle point where you will not use this part. So that's very important. This one's been designed to handle around 400 to 500 litres an hour. That's the size we've chosen because it allows to handle one high output pump or high flow pump at all times. So if you're sitting in traffic, idling, there's a lot of fuel returning, it will handle it. If you're running a twin pump setup, we always suggest you stage the pump. So don't run both pumps full speed all the time. Either speed control both of them or turn one and the other on later based on load.